because we say that there are these two categories. There is fantasy and reality. And if something's real, it's not a fantasy. And if something's a fantasy, it's not real. Buddhist tradition is not operating in these two categories at all. Our imagination is the creative capacity of the mind to enter into experience. So just as when we were looking at the example of the statue, we are all imagining this statue. Imagination means images. Images which can appear external to us, images in our mind. These are constructions. An image of a car, an image of your own children. You have an idea of your own children. Other people meeting your children don't see your children the way you see them. Your children exist in your imagination. You might say, but I see them every day. I give them a bath. I wash their clothes. They're not the imagination. It's not a fantasy. That's the reality of my life. But again, we have to be very clear here. The Buddhist notion of imagination is not saying it's a fantasy. It says everything is imagination. Everything is the creativity or the energy of the mind. And according to the particular repertoire of contents in the mind, and according to the freedom of expression, that is to say, whether we are very habitual in the pattern making that arises as our imagination, or whether it can be more free and spontaneous, we have different kinds of experience in the world. So, in this blue sky in front of us, this ball of light, it's the living presence of all the Buddhas. You can do this with your eyes open or closed, depending on what's easy for you. You can try it out. And as we look at this ball of light, we imagine that from it, rays of light are coming into us. These rays of light come in through our forehead and purify all the substantial material sense of being embodied. They come in through our throat and purify all the reifying use of language that we have, all the rigidity of our verbal expressions, and they come in to the heart, the site of the mind in the tradition, and they purify our over-reliance on thoughts, feelings, sensations, so that our body becomes filled up with light. You can imagine it here just as white light. Our body is now completely transparent, and it's as if our skin is made of glass. So there is no solid substance anywhere inside our body. And as we're imagining this, we recite Om Ahung. Om Ahung, Om is the expression of the Buddha's body, Ah of the Buddha's speech, Hung of the Buddha's mind. And as we're making this representation, we're linking our energy with the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. So we do this for some time, all together. And then, when we stop the reciting, we imagine this ball of light is going to the top of our head, and it descends through our head into our heart. So the ball is made of light, and our body is light. So then our body of light dissolves into the ball of light. Now there is only one thing in existence, this ball of light, and it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it vanishes. And we just rest in that state of complete openness, and then gradually thoughts, feelings, and sensations arise. And just give space to them, let them come and go as they are, with as little interference as possible. And then we come back into the experience of being in the room together. So we'll do this for a while, a short while, and then we'll have a break. Om Ahung Om Ahung, 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 Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om 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 Mahung, Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, Om Mahung, And gradually open yourself to the experience of being in the room. This is a very short practice, but it contains the essence of all the different tantric practices, and there are thousands and thousands of them. If you would like to do it more, you're very free to do that. You can elaborate it slightly by imagining the face of the Buddha or Padmasambhava on this ball of light. The key thing is to have faith. Faith is very important, because when we have faith, we gather ourselves into one place, and we're really believing this is the presence of all the Buddhas. We're not thinking about it or imagining it some kind of idea or fantasy. This is the actual presence. Here they are with me. And as we do the recitation, their nature, represented by the light and the sound of Om Ahung, is becoming integrated into us. So my nature is being transformed from my ordinary flesh and blood body, with all my habitual preoccupations and so on. These are just being gently dissolved and dissolved until I'm in this radiant body of light. All that I'm hearing is the sound of Om Ahung. The mind is just completely open to the experience. I don't need to have thoughts about anything else. And you can see that the tantric meditation evolved as a way of integrating spaciousness and energy, or movement and stillness. By the movement of the recitation and the visualization, the mind has a dynamic focus. And because the mind is used to being involved in complexity, if you give it a stable focus, like observing the breath or an external object, you have a discordancy between habitual tendency and meditation practice. So in Tantra, they take the very energy of our involvement in everyday life and transform it by moving it into a different mode. So now we're being purified, and our nature is becoming inseparable from the Buddha. And then the presence of all the Buddhas comes in through the top of our head and down into our heart, and we dissolve into that. So you start with two things. Me as an inadequate person, in the Buddha I was saying, Om Ahung, please purify me, make me the same as you. So that's a strong duality. And now, as the presence of the Buddha is in my heart, and my body made of light now dissolves from the feet up and the head down into this ball of light. So two are going into one. There is now just this integrated ball of light. And the ball of light gets smaller and smaller, and then vanishes into space. So now there is only space, or emptiness, the Dharmakaya, Dharmadhatu, infinite dimension of being. In that state, if we do the practice strongly, for a moment, there is nothing. Just open, nothing at all. Nothing at all, and yet we are present. So it's I'm present in nothing as nothing. In the Tibetan tradition, this is called riktong, or emptiness and awareness, inseparable. And then, inside that state, gradually experiences arise. Memories, thoughts, sounds of birds from outside, and so on. And then gradually we become more aware of complex manifestation. The key aspect in the practice at this point is to stay with the experience of infinite openness. Infinite means no limit. There is no limit at all to this openness. So when a thought comes, where does it come from? It comes from the infinite openness. If something has no limit, how will you import something from outside it into it? It's not possible, because it has no limit. Therefore, by definition, there is nothing outside it. When you really directly taste this experience, then you see, oh, thoughts are arising in and from the empty dimension of being. Sensations, the same. Ordinarily we think of sensation, oh, my knee is sore. And then we say, oh, I'm back in my body. But here, just stay open if there is a sensation. This is the energy or the radiance of the mind. So the Dharmakaya gives rise to this experience of radiant, nuanced, immediate sensation. Sensations, feelings, thoughts. This is the mind. And then, here is this room. Where is the room? Have I gone away on a holiday and come back to the room? This would be the ordinary understanding. But the point of Tantra is seeing the infinite emptiness of the mind. Now we see, oh, the room is in the mind. This room is experience. This is my experience. So we stay big, infinite. Awareness is infinite, and inside it, subject and object are moving. And we move ceaselessly. After a while we get up, we make a cup of tea, we have a pee, and so on. When we're walking, what are we walking in? The infinity of the mind. When we're talking, this is the sound of mantra. Everything we see is the radiance of the formation. This is the heart of all the tantric teachings. And you can do it as a practice. It's very nice. So whenever we get lost in life, whenever we feel overwhelmed by stuff and it's all too much and we feel oppressed and very small, you can take 5 minutes and just do this practice and come back into this openness. And everything is suddenly back in its place, in its size. Everything is dynamic movement in the mind. And if you stay open, like now we hear sound. Sounds, colors, shapes, forms, arising and passing, arising and passing. This is the radiance of the mind. So in this short practice you have your own mind as the Dharmakaya, that's to say the Buddha's mind. Arising from this you have the Sambhogakaya. Sambhoga means enjoyment. Kaya means mode or body or aspect. And it's the quality of being present with all experience without entering into judgment so that you can enjoy it. It's an aesthetic experience. And then from within this matrix of aesthetic experience, we have the Nirmanakaya, which means the expressive form. Nirmana means an expression or a emanation, something which comes out like a spark from a fire. So moment by moment, where body is moving, gestures, postures, speaking, and so on. This is within the field of experience. So this is living non-duality. I am here in this room with you. I'm not inside myself looking out at you from inside a private world. There is no private world. The ground of everything is completely open. The field is what I belong in, and I am the movement of the field, just as you are the movement of the field. And each of us is the center of the field. So we don't have to control and conflict with other people, but we can move. And this is the integration of the three kayas. So that is a way of understanding the illusory nature of the world. So you can do that practice if you like. And now we take a break. There's still a few people waiting for the toilet. Let me see if there's any questions just now then.
Just seems like a really basic question about practice. Do you sort of stop doing a mantra at the time when in your imagination you're dissolving into the ball of light, or at what, does it matter exactly what stage
no, it's a helpful question. Generally you would, if you're doing it on your own, you keep reciting the Om Ahung until you feel that your body's full of light. Of course, it depends on how much time you have available. So sometimes you could do it for 10 minutes, half an hour, sometimes only for 1 minute, depending on your availability. But generally speaking, you would do it until you had a sense that you'd fully received this and that there was now a kind of equalization. Because at first you can begin like almost like a small lost little child. You have all this power, I have nothing. And then gradually you're bringing about the shift, and then you grow into the merging. And you find in the Tibetan tradition many mantras have Om Ahung in them, because they represent exactly the body, speech and mind of the Buddhas. And the Tibetans have a saying that Om Ahung is the essence of all mantras. So if you know many mantras and you don't have much time, if you say Om Ahung 3 times, all your mantras are taken care of. These are called tricks of the trade. Okay, so in relation to Dzogchen, which is the third way of experiencing this illusory nature, in all the different vehicles or ways of practicing in Buddhism, they can be thought about in terms of 4 factors of view, meditation, activity and result. One of the reasons for giving a lot of explanations is to make sure that the view is clear. Because if you do the meditation practice without being clear about the view, it's then difficult to see where you might get lost in the meditation or start making mistakes. So in Dzogchen, the view is, from the very beginning, our own nature has been completely pure. That is to say, all seeming defilements or confusions or errors exist in relation to our real nature or our natural condition as a reflection exists in a mirror. The reflection doesn't contaminate the mirror. It's not outside the mirror, but neither does it merge completely into the mirror. So, say for example, say you've got a tendency to be lazy, and that sometimes that annoys you. And you think, I don't want to be lazy. If I was not lazy, I would be a better person and I would be able to make better use of my life. That's a thought. One thought linking into other thoughts. It's creating a kind of package or a schema. Who is having that thought? You are aware of the thought. The thought seems to have the light of its own. So, when you're at school, you're told by the teacher to pay attention and really think about what's going on. So we've got the idea, when we talk about the European Enlightenment, we're talking about the light of rational thought. That the light of rational thought can penetrate into some of the mysterious dark corners and dogmatic propositions, the remnants of the Middle Ages and religious dogma and so on. And with the light of the clarity of the thoughtful mind, there will be a freedom of experience. So that was Voltaire, Diderot and Rousseau and so on. And that's very much the basis of what we think, that thought is illuminating. From the Dzogchen point of view, the illumination of the thought is like the illumination of the moon. The moon has no light of its own. It's the sun which gives the light, which is caught by the moon and which is then reflected out, and so we see on a full moon night this great ball in the sky, and in some countries you can even read a book by the moonlight because it's very bright.
It kind of ricochets on the...
Exactly. So it looks as if the moon is the source of light, and then we realize no, it's a relay station for the light of the sun. In the same way, the natural luminosity of the mind, or awareness, or rigpa, is like the sun. That is what illuminates the thoughts, the feelings, the sensations, which then seem to have a light of their own. And when we are very caught up in the thoughts and feelings and sensations, their illuminating capacity and busyness sets off particular patterns, and we get into something, we're onto something, and it's all very interesting, and we seem to be getting somewhere. But in that very busyness, we don't see the actual source of the illumination. So when we say the mind's been completely pure from the very beginning, it means no defilement has ever covered it up. And these defilements are actually aspects of the natural illumination which are taken to be self-existing. So, for example, if I'm lazy, I think my laziness is getting in the way of my freshness or my commitment or my practice. It's an impediment, an obscuration, an obstacle. It stands between me and what I want to do. Therefore, I have to remove it. From the point of view of Dzogchen, and it's a bit similar to what we were doing in the last practice, when we experience the natural openness of the mind, where is the factory creating these bad thoughts? Where is the production system for these limitations and obscurations? If the ground is infinite, there is no other source than the ground. Therefore, what seems to be a limitation, if you stay with it, you will see that it vanishes. It is a self-liberating, energetic manifestation of the ground. So, as it were, from the dualistic position, when I'm thinking about myself, when I'm standing in relation to myself, I'm saying, James, you have a problem with this. Right? So I am speaking to myself about an aspect of myself. So you've got a complete triangulation. In this, the one who is speaking, I have to say this is a fact of my existence. I have to own up to it. I have a problem with whatever it is, laziness. The one who's saying that seems to be very honest, very clear, speaking the truth. Why would I say this about myself if it wasn't true? Wouldn't I be more likely to say, I am a wonderful person, rather than I am lazy? So I'm heartfelt, honest. It's a fact. That gives a felt sense of, there's a root clarity in that. I don't feel any impediment. I'm making my confession and I feel quite open. That is, from this Dzogchen point of view, that is a pseudo-illumination. Because it's actually the light of the ego. It's like the moon. It seems bright, but whose brightness is it? I have a problem with laziness. arises in the mind, and then a thought comes, oh, Monday morning tomorrow, I have to make sure I remember to put these bits of paper in my bag before I go to work. In that moment, I'm being quite efficient in my planning, and I'm not being lazy. Where has laziness gone? And where has the one who recognized the laziness gone? Because I know that I am lazy is a group formation. It's a gestalt. Different pieces have come together and made a pattern which seems convincing, which seems to be true, which seems to have intrinsic value, and then it's gone. And now I am into something else. And as we looked yesterday, it is the very openness or lack of inherent content in the first person singular that allows it to carry out its function. It is because I, as a signifier, is empty that it can be used to signify everything. You know, this is a watch. If we were children, we could imagine it's a big bird. Woo, woo, woo. But if we're adults, we are not allowed to do that kind of thing. So we can imagine things about anything, but usually not very much. Because once you've nailed this label of watch onto the object, it's a kind of done deal. Everything falls into place, and it is what it is. What is it? It's a watch. And you get a sort of solipsistic little sealed definition.
Although it could be called a timepiece.
It could indeed, yeah. But as long as we've got it defined in that way, there's a restriction on movement. But the first person singular, I, is not like that. Because I has no inherent